for joining us tonight. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us tonight for the first session of Assembly 2020, a special online edition of Somerset House Studios' annual experimental music series, running September the 23rd to the 27th. I'm Tamar Clarke-Brown. I'm a writer, artist and curator interested in emerging and experimental futures, diasporic practices and intimate choreographies. Today I'll be talking to visual artist Zadie Xa ahead of the presentation of her new audio work.
Okay, everyone, I'm not sure if you can see only me or if Tamar has now vanished. I have no idea.
And performance video painting self-identities and notions of self. Her layered textile works are sites for exploring identity construction and performance through cultural sampling informed by her experience within the Asian diaspora. Throughout her practice, she uses water and marine ecologies as Sorry for the cut-outs, everyone. I'll start again. Throughout her practice, Zadie uses water and marine ecologies as metaphors for exploring the unknown, whilst also alluding to abstract notions of homeland. Recent solo exhibitions include Child of Magahalmi and the Echoes of Creation, a co-commission with Art Night London, Yarrak Contemporary Art Space Baku, Tramway Glasgow, and Dear War Pavilion Bexhill. She has also staged performances at international galleries and festivals, including Art Night London 2019, 58th Venice Biennale, Palais de Tokyo, Hayward Gallery, Serpentine Gallery, Block Universe, and the Korean Cultural Centre, UK. Zadie's new piece will be presented online this evening at 7 p.m. following this chat, available on a new interactive listening platform made especially for the series. That's at assembly2020.co, so do check it out afterwards. So, on the eve of the almost September equinox, we're going to be discussing the work, the ideas it engages with, and the process of making, all the while inviting into the conversation a text that has been quite key for Zadie over this time, Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Maree Brown, published 2017 by AK.
Okay, folks, I think that Tamar has cut out again. I'm in communication with Somerset House just to see what we're going to be doing with this. If this is going to keep cutting out, maybe we'll have an alternative route in which Tamar and I can continue our conversation. Okay.
Hi everyone again, I'm so sorry for the cut out. If you bear with us, we can...
Sorry.
Hopefully it won't keep settle into a more consistent stream as we go. Bit of a window close. Thanks everyone again for joining back with us. I was just saying that on this almost eve of the September equinox, we're going to be discussing the work, the ideas it engages with, and the process of making, while inviting into the conversation a text that has been quite key, I understand, for Zadie over this time, Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Maree Brown, published 2017 by AK Press. Emergent Strategy presents this idea of being in right relation with each other species and the planet, and welcoming this complexity and collaboration in the face of critical change and movements towards justice. The book is dedicated to people that want to change the world in the right way. As many monuments are toppling, and there are so many kind of different narratives around identity happening and evolving, it's a really crucial time to have this conversation with Zadie and see what new ideas she has to put into the space. So, it's not just a case of the new normal. We know that the world needs to change if we're to survive, or rather that we need to change if we're to survive, and we need to rework our reality and socialise each other better, because the world isn't ours alone. Enough from me. Zadie and me will talk for about 30 minutes, and then we'll open up to questions. So please put any of your questions you've got in the comment section on the social streams that you're watching, and we'll go from there. So let's start. Let's get into the conversation. Zadie, let's start at the beginning. Could you introduce the work for us in your own words?
Sure. I guess beforehand, it's raining very, very hard right now in London. Can you hear me okay? It's like I got like a tin roof above me, and it's just like pounding. You can hear me though. Okay. So basically,
I was wondering what it was.
It's very intense. Okay. So basically, I am presenting a 6-part narrative whereby the viewer or the audio viewer will be taken on kind of a journey through, let's think, 5 parallel dimensions, guided by 5 different creatures or animals that kind of explain, I guess, their lived situation or problems that they're encountering at the cause or the hands of humans. And so as the listener, I'm hoping that everyone thinks deeply about what they're talking about, and how that some of those things are paralleled and mirrored in the kind of difficulties that I think a lot of people are thinking about and facing today.
Were there kind of specific feels or thoughts behind the creation of the work? Why now?
Yeah,
for example.
Yeah. So I was I came on board to do this project, this residency, kind of I think around June, or I don't really remember. But I had been thinking about this project since December last year, and I was originally going to make this work for an exhibition that I have coming up in Canada at Remy Modern Museum and Leeds next year. And I knew I wanted to make a sound piece that would be the anchor point to the rest of the exhibition. But obviously, COVID happened, and then the subsequent media frenzy and centered focus on institutionalized racism and police brutality and murder against Black folks, and particularly in the United States. And so, with all of this time and chaos that was going around me, I had a lot of time to really think about the way in which I was shaping this story. And, since the beginning, I think I was largely thinking about a continuation of my interest in creation myths and kind of femme or female archetypes, especially within mythology and fantastical ideation or writing. And also interests in marine ecologies and how I often use that as a backdrop to think about kind of traversing throughout the diaspora for an ancestral homeland that might be abstract and actually not even in existence as we know it within this time. But I suppose once I started really thinking deeply about the ecology and thinking about the city that my family immigrated to and I was born in on the Pacific Northwest coast, I started thinking kind of more readily about day-to-day things that are happening there, happening to folks that are on the ground there. And thinking about how those things actually related to some of the things that I was thinking through, oftentimes through maybe like a more fantastical narrative, again, thinking about parallel worlds, but how am I able to bring those parallel worlds and how are they able to touch on key issues today? And obviously in the beginning when COVID was such the focus of what people were paying attention to, there's a lot of articles talking about how we humans are not in right relation with the land, basically, right? And how if you destroy nature, you basically unleash a lot of different things that, in succession cause other problems. Everything is connected. So, that was something I was largely thinking about, and I felt really, really important. It felt very important to address those things within the work. and not in a way like I wasn't trying to make, you know, coronavirus artwork or anything, which is fine however people want to respond. But it just became very apparent that, of course, these ideas are urgent. You know, being from the Pacific Northwest coast, I think the idea of environmentalism, reduce, reuse, and recycle, you know, I'm turning 37 this year. These things were taught to me when I was in kindergarten, when I was about 5 years old. So these are things that I've been thinking about for a long time. But it's just impossible to not really pay attention. You know, this is kind of the first time that I've really been thinking about ecology in my work in such a profound way. And it's probably because these things, as we know, it's the touchstone of what is part and parcel of so many societal, social problems that we are facing. So I know that was a very long-winded way in which to kind of describe those things. But I mean, it is essentially what I was thinking about and why now, as you just said. And, you know, that can extend into other things that we're thinking about and being in right relation to each other as well. How are we treating one another, you know, and how are these things interconnected with land, with people, with history?
Absolutely. Do you feel like there was kind of an intention you set when you set about making it? Was there something that you wanted to achieve? Was there a particular intention, or was it kind of more of an exploration of this moment in time and how we can be in right relation, as you say?
You know, I think previously in my work, I'm always thinking about, I guess the intention of the work is, you know, to explore certain, I guess, like, you know, shadowed stories or things that haven't had much attention to in the past just because of, you know, patriarchal viewpoints, colonialism, etc. But I think more than ever now, I guess I was thinking about, rather than exploring certain ideas that kind of were self-serving to what my own interests were and what I wanted to just explore because of my own kind of, you know, fanciful thoughts of, you know, self-expression or something. I guess when you have so much time to sit at home and really think deeply about what's going on, I think for me anyways, it hit a nerve where I thought, what am I doing? What is the point of, you know, the work that I'm making? How is it benefiting anyone? I think especially for someone who shows largely in public institutions, which are places that should serve the public, right? Like, what kind of service can my work do, my own small voice? And so there are certain things in the sound work that, you know, are also part of the exhibition that it'll be a part of later this year. I was thinking about very specific moments, let's just say, that are happening in Canada, for example, with, like, you know, the pipelines, you know, Indigenous folks demanding for their own sovereignty to self-govern and to be, you know, have full stewardship over the land. You know, as someone who's living in the UK and is really disconnected to what's going on the ground there, I'm only able to kind of hear about that stuff secondhand on the internet or on Instagram or something. And so for me, I just feel like it's really important to have these conversations and discussions within work, if that is the way your work works. This is not to say that every artist needs to do that. They might, you know, hold that space in their life in a different way throughout, you know, activities they might embody within their community. But for me, it just felt really important. Like, what can my work do? What can I touch to? How can this be of service to other people? And that sounds really self-aggrandizing, and I don't mean for it to. I mean, like, the way I'm speaking about the work in the work is I am thinking largely about the conversations I've had with my own colleagues and people that are in my community. And I feel like the more we talk about things, the more these things become normalized and mainstream, and hopefully encourage people to make small gestures within their own community in order to make impact. I think it's really easy to feel a lot of weight on one shoulder and ponder about how you can be a better person and do less bad. And then it becomes really, I feel like, nihilistic to think about all the things that we're up against. So I felt like, in my own way, this was something that I could insert because I had a very small platform that would hopefully generate conversation and really think thoroughly about the engineering of a project or a presentation and how that involve so many people and so many hands, right? So this goes back to Adrienne Maree Brown's emergent strategy and you know, the experience of working within activist and community circles, which I don't belong to, but I'm definitely here to listen and to learn and think about how I can apply those things in my own personal life as well. Can you hear me, Tamar?
That's so critical, and thank you for giving us that really full answer in terms of that question. I think it really sets up so much of the way that you're thinking and through and the production of the thought process around the work. I can hear you, yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you. I was just thanking you for that answer and for kind of setting up that kind of framework for the production of this work. I think it's a good time to swing into the specifics of it. And I understand that the work is kind of loosely based on this story of someone called Princess Barry. Could you tell us a little bit about her and about why you kind of chose to take that as a route into the work?
Yeah, so I think a lot of, in the recent 5 years, the way I've kind of always started a project was thinking about Korean mythology and folk tales. This is something, I guess, like a window.
Could I repeat the question?
Say that again? Okay. Just bear with me, folks. I'm just going to ask Somerset House if I can keep talking, because I'm not sure if I'm cutting out or not, because I can just continue on. Sure, no problem. So basically, Princess Bari, or Bari Gongchu, was the seventh daughter of a king and queen, and basically this is a kind of a Korean mythological folktale that was passed orally through Korean shamans. And in Princess Bari's plight, she basically went through hell in order to reach a life-saving elixir in order to save her parents, the king and queen, who basically abandoned her. That's what her name means, in order to save their lives. So what I thought was really interesting about this is, as I was saying earlier, sorry, we cut out, I got a little bit of a brain freeze, is that oftentimes with my work, I think about Korean mythology and folk tales. I think largely because I'm really interested in storytelling, and as a young child, this is kind of the entry point into Korean culture that I was able to access through my mom telling me stories at night. So anyways, this is kind of how I usually think about the ideas in which I'm working. I will find a story that I feel like has resonance with some of the things I want to say, and then use it as kind of a very loose framework how I might navigate a story. I never make original work. I'm very unoriginal. Anyways, so the reason why I thought Princess Bari was interesting was because of my interest in Korean shamanism, with the idea of kind of traversing the living and the dead world. Princess Bari is thought to be the kind of the deity or the goddess who is able to bring souls to the underworld. So the connector to the living and the dead. And the way she got there was basically she went through all these trials and tribulations, went through hell and back, and she basically went on this journey in order to find this cure for her parents. And this story, obviously, depending on geographically where it's told, has variances. But one of the versions is that she went and she had to find these special flowers and an elixir of life, water, to bring to her parents in order to revive them back to life. How that relates to my story is I was really interested in kind of centering the audience as a Princess Bari, and taking everyone on a guided journey in order to find this kind of, life-saving water thing that would help heal an ailing world, basically. And I was interested in the idea of time travel and how the audience was able to do that through the kind of guided instructions of these creatures, these five characters. Sorry, Tamar, you are back. Okay.
Back. Sorry, it's a bit of a ghost. It's a bit of a ghost talk. I think the rain's playing with us a little bit today.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I was kind of rambling there. I felt a bit insane because I was just talking to myself.
Were you talking about
I was. So I gave a very, very strange, discombobulated overview of why I was interested in the story, and how it relates to the framework of the way I was thinking about putting the audience at the center point, as if they themselves are Princess Body, the ones who have to journey and be guided through, different dimensions, meeting all sorts of characters in order to hopefully find some type of solution for whatever this thing is that's going on. That's basically not good for anyone living on this planet. So.
And we meet these 5 characters: the conch, the seagull, the cabbage, the fox, and the orca. Some of which are kind of characters from past works, right? Why did you choose these kind of particular voices?
So yeah, I think, as I was saying earlier, I just the same way I use kind of like Korean mythology or ideas of storytelling as a frameworks in order to start a work, I usually latch on to certain objects or animals or things because I obviously inherently probably narcissistically see myself in them or find some type of attachment. So for me, the cabbage idea is I'm like most Koreans, I really love kimchi, which is like a fermented cabbage side dish. That's a kind of a national food staple of Koreans. And it's thought to be very good for your digestive gut. So just thinking about, a power food that I very much connected to when I was a child. I watched my mom make it. It's like my favorite food. My partner makes it for me. It's something I really adore. But also thinking about its relationship to the land and thinking about how it, its relation to flora and fauna, basically, and how that could be a stand-in for thinking about the earth, what's inside. The seagull, being from the Pacific Northwest coast, even living in London, having my studio here, I've got a colony of gulls outside. I think seagulls have always made me really feel at home listening to them, like, whatever, very shrilly scream out. I like it. I find it comforting. And I've always thought of the seagull as being quite a scrappy, opportunistic kind of like working class bird. And I guess it's kind of how I've always imagined myself. If I was a bird, I'd probably be a seagull. And then again, the fox, I'm really interested in shape-shifting. For those who are interested in East Asian folklore, people will know there's a lot of different shape-shifting animals. The fox is one of them. And so I was interested in using an animal that, had that kind of rootedness within mythology, but also its relationship to folklore in the UK, and also the presence it has here in London or in other, cities like Leeds, where I will have the exhibition next year. I'm interested in kind of bridging in that type of connection for the audience. So, folks in Saskatoon in Canada or in Leeds, they can also relate. They might not relate to the orca as much because it's not an animal that they associate with their city, but foxes, I feel, are ubiquitous everywhere and quite interesting, maligned characters in history. And I find really quite charismatic. And then the orca, as I'm not sure everyone else does, but it's just an animal. It's my favorite animal, and it's an animal that I have been thinking about since I was a very small child. And very recently, with some of the previous projects that I have worked with, they've been kind of the protagonist, the star. So I wanted to, I guess, make the connection of work that I previously worked on and bring that into new things that I'm thinking about today, because I guess everything is kind of an extension of thing before it. I don't have these clear demarcated lines of kind of new projects. Everything is kind of, I guess, mixed in. The lines are blurred.
I'm curious about the process of kind of constructing each of these narratives, if that's, or mythologies, if that's what you want to call them. I don't know. I'm just giving you words. What did that look like? What did that look like for you? And especially in terms of audio, right?
Yeah. So when you say like constructing these stories or, whatever, self-mythologies, do you mean like the kind of logistics of making it? Like, what do you mean by that when you say the construction, like interested in the process?
I guess I'm interested in how you kind of got not into the mindset of them, but they're these very sort of personal narratives from the point of view of each of these creatures, right? Or each of these organisms, each of these life forms. So I guess I'm quite curious in just the process of how you went about sort of, I guess, immersing yourself in each of those life forms sort of being.
Yeah. Well, Sure. I mean, obviously, as if everyone is obviously thinking what I'm thinking. But to me, it was obvious that I would be anthropomorphizing these creatures because this is what humans tend to do, you know, unless you're like, you know, really kind of like strident scientist who knows, you know, better. But I guess I was just thinking about things that were happening in and around me, around us, that felt very urgent and important, not just now, but maybe especially now. So for example, the seagull, I was thinking about the air, you know, thinking about the air that we're breathing, thinking about how that relates to coronavirus. I wrote this, you know, a few months ago, so it was kind of in the height of all the frenzy of being really unsure about these airborne particles and how they might transmit. So, you know, and then thinking also largely about pollution, you know, chemical pollution. Things that we breathe. So, you know, thinking about, well, how would a seagull think about this in their own perspective, but I guess through the lens of course, a human or myself. But yeah, trying to, I guess, imagine what madness the world must look like to all these animals who are just living their lives and so much in the present and have to contend with so much garbage that we're emitting. So, I mean, those are the things I was thinking about. I was deeply thinking about a lot of things that I'm concerned about: water pollution, noise pollution, you know, from the perspective of, let's say, the orca, and thinking about other things like garbage, thinking about kind of our total disregard and, I guess, lack of respect for the land. Not everyone, but, you know, corporate interests, resource extraction, capitalism, that type of thing. And so I guess it's all these big world topics, and how do you shrink them down and make them easily digestible? Because I oftentimes get very, very overwhelmed, and I can retreat into a very kind of isolated, nihilistic frame of mind. And it's almost unbearable to really think about all the challenges we have, but it's obviously really futile to think like that. So, I mean, whilst I was thinking about a lot of these things, I was reading, you know, just stuff in the news, and it got me down. But, you know, I think it's important to be aware as well, right? There are certain things that are happening specifically on the Pacific Northwest coast with regard to pipelines that are being built at the opposition of many people, Indigenous or colonial settler descendants or otherwise. You know, but these things have capital interest, so they just keep going, and they, you know, there is a spider web work of destruction that these things cause. But anyways, so yeah, I had to get into that frame of mind. I had to kind of educate myself, even if it was just very general information that I could, you know, find on the news, as a way to kind of speak about larger endemic systemic problems that we're seeing in lots of different countries that, you know, I might not have direct relationship to, but I can see, I hear about. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I mean, yeah, I guess it's just having time to think, having time to really, really get down and think about these things, and think about like how you can insert these ideas into your work, because I think it's impossible that people wouldn't be affected creatively, even if you were not addressing these things head on. How can you not? We've all been at home thinking about these issues. So
100%. 100%. I'm going to ask you more about what you think the kind of power of sound in a sense is a little bit later, but I just want to touch on the specifics. So if we get more into the process for you, what was it about? What was the process of working with sound like for you for this commission? Because you have before in your practice, but not in this scale, you know, not for this sort of digital environment. What was that like?
Well, I think like some of the processes in which I was responsible for, let's just say like kind of creating the arrangement, like digging up different sounds and slicing them up together, working with an amazing voice actor, Samantha Lawson. You know, that kind of was all the same, with the exception of obviously working with Samantha, which was difficult because it was kind of the height of COVID, and she is based in another country. So, you know, you don't have that direct relationship with being with someone in the studio and providing direction and, you know, encouragement or notes or something. So that was tricky. But I mean, with regards to working with Tom Slater from Call and Response at Somerset House, I really had to let go of my control issues. And I think it would have been okay if I kind of was there, you know, all the time, like overseeing and like micromanaging. But I thought it was actually really exciting just to kind of like, you know, talk through ideas, listen to a bunch of sounds, and also get, you know, his input into things. And that was really exciting and important for me because I've never worked with a 360 spatial sound. You know, I'm a very, very DIY basic sound person, right? So being exposed to that type of technology is very exciting because you are open to possibilities that you would not even know were available to you because of the kind of, just the lack of knowledge that one is able to do that with certain machines and gadgets and stuff. So that was actually very exciting. I mean, that's probably the hope, that anytime you do something, you're able to learn. And I mean, this is why I really enjoy collaboration, because once you work with someone and you have to let go, which is difficult for someone like me who's, you know, I have control tendencies. It's exciting because you become vulnerable. So you need to let go, and then new things happen, which are unexpected, you know, good and bad, but you grow from those things. So I really enjoyed it. That was great.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we all have control issues, don't we? We all do. I felt like I was very kind of walking around and wanted to, I mean, it's an immersive environment, but I really felt like I was like walking around with my headphones on, listening to it, you know, before I had a little sneak preview of the sound, everyone. But it really did kind of key me into this ability. I wanted to explore the space. I wanted to explore the space with the sound. And I feel like Adrienne Maree Brown talks about seeing this idea of wholeness as healing behavior. Do you think there's a kind of a certain way of listening or a different way of experiencing or working with sound that came to you through this project?
Well, I think, you know, especially for something like this where it's completely audio dependent, which in many ways is really problematic because obviously there are folks who are hearing impaired or who are deaf who are not able to experience that. So that would be something that I would think about. That's not positive. But with regards to the way I usually work with is with dependent on a lot of visuals, costumes, people, you know, film, painting, sculpture. Those are things you can rest and lean upon, right? But when you have just the sound component, or similarly, if you were to make a film with no sound, right, you really need to think about how that's going to be, I guess, absorbed by your audience. And so I guess the way I thought about it was, it is a long piece, I do admit that, but I'm very concerned with not boring people. And that's probably why I wrote something that was a bit more linear, that one would hopefully want to follow along to. I think sometimes when I work in a gallery space, I don't mind if things are a bit more nonlinear and abstract and people are able to walk in and out. And I also do that because I never want people to feel bound to a space in order to kind of experience the whole work. But I guess for this, I think, you know, hearing you, Tamar, say that you were walking around your garden, you know, I don't know what you were doing, your chores, meditating, hanging out, that's really exciting for me because that's the way I like to experience those things. When my dog was alive, you know, that's how I experienced a lot of different sound works. I would take him for a walk, be in nature, and kind of really allow myself to be present and listen to things very deeply, because this is something that I don't always do. And so I think it's important. And I think you pointed out to me earlier that the work has a lot of, there's some repetitive refrains or words, and one of them is listen, you know, and that idea is that I don't always listen to. I'm always running constantly on this kind of grinding, you know, machinery. And I'm also just kind of like zipping by, and I'm never in the moment. This is something that I need to work on. And so I think that my hope is that, I guess I just want people to feel relaxed. If you want to listen to this before you go to bed, that's cool too, you know? I don't know if that answers your question.
I mean, it does very much feel like this kind of almost like a guided meditation, or like that's how I kept listening to the different parts and then listening and re-listening and re-listening. But there is this really kind of undeniable feeling of some sense of healing or some sense of roundness in the whole work. And I wanted to draw attention to, there's a quote by a writer, a Black feminist writer called Toni Cady Bambara, who says, "The role of the writer is to make the revolution irresistible," which in many ways ties into this notion of visionary fiction. So I was wondering what you thought of the idea of auditory fiction and sound as a connected medium or medium of possibilities.
Well, I think on one hand, you know, as someone who who's like a hearing person, you know, that functions in a way where you can have direct messages, you can use sound as a material, think of it as certain, I guess, a material of building blocks in order to kind of transmit, you know, whatever ideas that you're thinking. Of course, on the other hand, if I think about that from the perspective of a hearing person, I feel like there's definitely obviously huge blind spots. So, I mean, what I will say is, directly speaking to your quote, and thinking about, you know, this actual work as auditory fiction, and, you know, how there might be an urgency from the maker to make certain ideas irresistible. That is really kind of the framework in which I thought about these ideas. So, for example, how can we think about, you know, systemic, large world, you know, emotionally crushing topics, but in a way where they kind of are bite-sized, where we're able to digest them, because these are things that should be of interest and urgency to everyone, right? Really, I mean, I don't believe in universality, because it's impossible, but you know, these things are important for everyone to think about. And so I really love that quote, because it's true. It's like, I feel as an artist, that's what it is. It's like, you spoke about intention before. It's like the responsibility that I choose to try to take on, right? I'm not saying everyone needs, people are free to do what they want, but just for me, the way my work functions naturally, the way I enjoy working as an artist with other people, yeah, it's important to get some of these messages out. Again, especially in places like public institutions, when there's a whole host of folks that are coming through that, you know, don't always belong to an art world demographic. You know, I get a lot of kids that come to my shows too, just because of the nature of kind of, I guess, the objects or things that are involved in some of the installations. And it's really important to get people thinking. Yeah, so I like the idea of auditory fiction. Again, I don't know if that answers your question. I think I was being a little bit about it, but
Oh, it's more of a conversation, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
See where we get to.
yeah.
As a reminder, just reminding people that we have got a Q&A. If anyone wants to add any questions in, just add them in the comment section in the social media that you're watching on, or on the website that you're watching on, and we will make sure that they get asked. If I don't see any coming in, we will continue going for a little longer, and then we will do a little wrap up. So my next question, while we wait for those to come in, is just, one of my favourite voices in the piece is the cabbage, who says, "You nurtured and willed me into existence." And throughout the whole piece, you know, I've been talking about different issues that each of these voices raise, but there's a fragility to all of it, to the whole auditory experience. It's kind of very sort of trance-like, but there's also this really clear idea of interdependence, like you're talking about the importance of collaboration and survival. Interdependence for survival, is very clear here. There's a way that a lot of the different voices, you'll hear parts that they say echoed in the next part, for example. And I'm just quite curious about this kind of leakage between the voices. You could talk on that a little bit.
So when you say leakage, do you mean like certain repetitive refrains that are repeated throughout each character's story? Yeah, I guess because I was also really, so if we go back to the idea of the shapeshifter, or kind of like the main protagonist in a lot of work is this kind of like, I guess, femme or female archetype, which is kind of dressed up as a shaman who is a shapeshifter. I was thinking about, you know, there are 5 different characters, but are they also one character that's kind of floating through the bodies of many different animals in order to take different forms, in order to take the audience on a journey through like sky, land, water, forest, etc. So the reason why there is some repetition is also because of the idea of interconnectedness and how everything affects, you know, from the minute to the most grand, to the largest thing. It's like everything is connected. So whatever would concern, let's say, you know, the bird would also be of concern to the plant, or to be concerned to the insect, because all of these things are, we're all connected. Like, I know that sounds like a very corny notion, but I mean, if you really deeply think about it, I mean, it's very, very true. And so I also wanted to kind of have, I guess, kind of, what's that word called? When there's like a song, it's like an earworm, is that what it's called? When you can't get a song out of your head. So I wanted to kind of create that thing where you really are listening. And when there's that part in the Cabbage's kind of narration where they talk about, plants also communicate, which I think many people already obviously know. People obviously sometimes communicate to their plants and we talk to their plants, but the idea that, we cannot centralize the way in which humans operate on this and interface with the world and lay that out onto every other being and creature here, right? So it's just because we can't hear or understand the way certain creatures or plants will speak, it doesn't mean that they don't have language. This is the thing. So it's the idea that you are listening. And how do you listen to a rock? How do you listen to a river? How do you llisten to a forest? There are ways in which you can do that again, it shouldn't only be so hearing dependent, as what I was talking about, how, there is the problematics of it being solely for, an auditory experience, and how that obviously there's a huge blind spot, or it doesn't include a whole swath of folks who aren't able to participate. So what are other ways in which we can hear, right? Like, I guess hearing listening doesn't necessarily only mean this way. But yeah, I guess another thing, if we go back to my interest in dreaming, right? The dangerous daydreamer, I think that's called. The idea that we would even dare to dream up new worlds, dream up new possibilities for one another, for our community, for the planet. That idea of dreams, and how dreams are like these, I kind of like, I don't know, I don't even know how to explain sometimes the feelings that I have when I wake up from dreams. These uncanny feelings of slipperiness, how things slide in and out of one another. I guess that was kind of the thing I was trying to, allude to. The idea of kind of like repetition. Yeah. And I guess what you just said, the idea of like the trance, which relates to kind of, again, shamanism, how one is able to get to that altered frame of mind in order to kind of transcend this plane and get to another one. I guess this is how people who do transcendental meditation must also feel. But anyways, yeah.
It's definitely, I think this idea that there's something about sound that makes the idea of possibility feel even more possible. There's something about the realm of sound that really brings this idea of possibilities into the frame, or into the fore, I guess. That does it in such a way that is maybe vibration. It is vibrational, but is something more than, you don't need to necessarily know the words, know the images, but there's something about the vibration, something about the space of sound that kind of is that space of possibility, I guess.
Mm.
So as we are just getting to the end of the conversation, just a reminder, if anyone does want to add any questions, it's not too late. We've got about 5 minutes or so, but I'll start wrapping up if I don't see any come in over the next few minutes. I just want to say thank you to Zadie. While I think of any more questions for this conversation already, it's already been a pleasure. Thank you for everyone for sticking with us through the glitch and the rain.
You know what's smart? No one ever has questions after I do a talk, because I like ramble
you talk
on and on and on. Yeah, because I talk a lot. I think that's my strategy. So I'm just like, I've covered all the pieces. But also because like I've been rambling a bit, because it's like I don't know if there's like a delay between you and I. So then it's like, instead of having a silent period, I'm just gonna talk on top of this gap. But I'm probably on your side. You're probably like, man, you gotta stop talking so I can get a word in. But that's what's happening.
No, it's been great. But I'm also wondering if you have anything because I think there's always this thing that I always want to ask artists, if people don't ask them about something that they really want to talk about, but they never get asked that question, or if there's any kind of other comments you want to add you don't feel like we've really touched on. Any kind of parting comments?
I really do. The conversation that me and you had with kind of the things that you were asking me, I feel like you had really, really good questions. I feel like if you have a last comment or a quote or a question, if there was a favorite thing, that's so narcissistic. If there was something in the sound work that popped out to you that was interesting or something that stuck with you, what was it?
My favorite line actually in the piece was this line that says, all bodies that vibrate change are seen as a threat. We've just had a question come through from the audience, but I just thought that was a really beautiful poetic line. Okay, so our question is how this work with spatial sounds might impact how you approach sound with other projects.
Well, that's a very good question. Yeah, thanks. So, you know, before I even got hooked up with Somerset House, as I was saying, I was working on an exhibition that's going to open in Canada at the end of October. And I had never worked with spatial sound, but it's something I really, really wanted to do. And so when I was able to do this residency and work with Tom, I was so excited because I just thought, this is the person that I was trying to think, like, who is this person I need to work with in order to make this happen? So basically, this sound work is going to premiere obviously tonight, and it's an audio, you know, full work that you can experience online or just, you know, headphones, whatever. But it actually will be part of a larger installation exhibition that has like a variety of kind of large kind of costume garments and different sculptures that my collaborative partner Benito made, which are amazing. And so the way I have thought specifically about that piece in that space is how I'm able to work with live performance without having live people embody the work, right? Not only because of COVID, this is something I was thinking about before. How are you able to create that type of live theatricality without having people activate it? And for me, within that space, it's the idea that there will be certain speakers set up and the audio will move around the space in a way where hopefully the audience feels like there is actually, you know, characters or avatars or creatures present in the room with them. And so the sound will basically, be timed and organized with theatrical lighting and the sculptures that are there. So it's the thought that the sculptures look like they're talking. The voices and the sounds are emanating from these kind of like sculptural objects. So I guess it's just storytelling in a physical way where, you know, you're in an immersive environment. But the thing that's really cool about this piece with that I did with Tom is that, you know, hopefully you're able to get that experience on your headphones when you're walking around town or at your, I don't know, in your garden, hanging out on the couch, eating ice cream, in your studio, I don't know. Anyways.
The second question we've got coming in, but I think you kind of half answered it, but maybe not, is what you're working on next. I'm assuming it's the exhibitions, but tell me if not.
Yeah, well, I'm working on a few things next. So I am working with my permanent longtime collaborator, Benito, obviously on the exhibition that's opening up in Canada, and that'll open up in Leeds next year. And we're working on a small kind of experimental live performance with another long-term collaborator of mine, Jaya U. Korti. And then I've got, I'm really excited about just presenting some work alongside an artist I really admire and a friend of mine named Admin Oliti, and that will be with Galeria Agustina Ferreira in Curimanzutu in Mexico. And just some other stuff next year that I'm really excited about. So yeah, and in London next year too. So that will be cool because I don't often do things here. So it'll be nice. Yeah.
Exciting. Thank you so much. I'm gonna wrap up the conversation just because in 10 minutes you'll all be able to watch Zadie's new work on assembly2020.co. So make sure that you log into that and wait until 7 p.m. or go and get a drink, come back, log in and watch and listen. I just wanted to wrap it up by saying thank you so much, Zadie. It's been really exciting and really enriching to talk to you at length.
Thank you so much, Tamar. And you're such a trooper. You're so professional. You just plowed through all the technical difficulties. And it's very important for me to say this here because I feel like that got us off a little bit to a rockier start than we had expected. I really want to hold space and say thank you so much for being so thorough in your questions and your thoughts about the work and the way in which you engaged and held space for me. I'm really, really thankful for that. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I feel like this thank you also for the invitation to reread Emergent Strategy. It's been a lot of, you know, I've got some more lessons from that as well.
Everyone must get that.
Reapplying. Everyone has to. Everyone has to. Thank you also for the studio team.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was recommended to me by Legacy Russell, who is an amazing artist and writer and just dropped a book, Glitch Feminism, which everyone should also get. So really important kind of critical thinkers that are, you know, wonderfully making things that are easily accessible to all of us. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Is it a bit cheesy if I finish with reading the core principles of Emergent Strategy?
No, you should absolutely.
Let's do it. Let's do it. And then everyone can log out from us. Okay. Core principles. Change is constant. Be like water. There is always enough time for the right work. There is a conversation in the room that only these people at this moment can have. Find it. Never a failure, always a lesson. Trust the people. If you trust the people, they become trustworthy. Move at the speed of trust. Focus on critical connections more than critical mass. Build the resilience by building the relationships. Less prep, more presence. What you pay attention to grows. And with that, we leave you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Tamar. Thank you.